Imagine transforming a process from
like 5 days, and they can get this done in an hour or less.
Thanks to AI and automation, the potential here is enormous. Join Panida, where we talk on the Techstars Founder podcast. Empower your startup journey as a non-technical founder with actionable insights of successful entrepreneurs. Get ready, because our guest today is an absolute powerhouse in the world of data and AI. She's the genius behind Dataffluent, a Jamaican research and data science company that's transforming the Caribbean's approach to financial insights and modeling. A distinguished Jamaican tech entrepreneur with nearly 2 decades of experience. She's held leadership roles in multinational companies and trained over 10,000 professionals in business intelligence. Plus, her company, Dataffluent, was selected for the prestigious Techstars Accelerator program in 2024. Welcome to the show, Raquel. Can you explain what data scarcity means in the context of the Caribbean and how it impacts local businesses?
Yeah, sure. So data scarcity means that data is either not available, the data may be outdated. So it may be something that's 3, 4 years old, not very useful, or it is that we, in some instances, just don't have the resources to be able to capture that data. And unfortunately, in Jamaica, in the wider Caribbean, we do have some amount of data scarcity. Things are changing, which is great. You're seeing a lot more numbers come out now from different sources around different things, but it's still a major problem for us. Yeah.
So, what are some practical steps that Caribbean businesses can take to leverage AI and data science effectively?
That's a good one. The thing is, so with AI, data science, we know for AI uses a lot of data, right? So having data scarcity and then trying to like build AI models and train AI models, it almost sounds a little bit like there's a gap there, right? So in terms of what Caribbean businesses can do is, I think what I've seen over the last maybe 5 to 10 years, especially since COVID, is that a lot more businesses are focused on digital transformation. And we know digital transformation in the more developed world is 10 years ago, but COVID forced a lot of Caribbean companies to really think about their online digital presence, right? Do I even have a website? Am I only relying on an Instagram profile to get in contact with my customers? Do I have a CRM? All of those different components. So I think what Caribbean businesses need to do is to start owning their data, start owning their systems as best as they can. We know it's not always practical in some instances, or where it is possible. Try to own your data and own your systems and think of your own digital strategy, right? There's so many resources that are available now. You don't need to always get a consultant or get someone in. You can easily just find some frameworks online and go through those processes of how you focus on having a digital focused enterprise, right? Have your own website. Ensure that you can connect with your customers if anything should happen to some of these social media platforms. Make sure that you have some sort of CRM where you're tracking your customers. Person may say, yeah, I have Excel that I used to track my customers. And that may be okay, just at least knowing that you have it somewhere, but try and get that into some sort of system, HubSpot, Salesforce, something else as well, so they can get access to more rich insights. If you want to send an email, if you want to do testing on your customers, if you want to connect with them, give them a promotion, just wish them happy birthday, whatever it may be, right? You really need to start thinking, how do I have customer relationship management system for these customers? And then from that, once you start building up more data, I think it will be great as well to start using little bits of AI to be able to help you. We know about ChatGPT and all of those different LLMs that are out there, but there's a lot more to artificial intelligence than just LLMs, right? You can build entire workflows using AI agents to automate parts of your business, to make your business more efficient, to just do maybe something simple that you would have hired somebody for. You could save time and money by looking at how you could use an AI agent to automate that process. And there's also other things that you can do. You can even test out sites like Lovable and Replit and literally build entire website systems. You could even ask one of these systems to build a CRM for you, right? And use that internally in your own company instead of paying a subscription to some of these other companies. So there's a lot of different ways that AI can help. But I think it starts with one, being digitally focused and thinking about the data that you're going to capture for your customers and how you can, as best as possible, own that data for yourselves in your own systems. Yeah.
So you talk a lot about data ownership. So that means having your data on several platforms and also ensuring you have a system to ensure you don't lose things as well.
Exactly. Right. It's really thinking through that anything can happen when you run a business that could be detrimental to your business. Like I think Meta had an outage and you had persons that couldn't connect with their customers because their only way to connect with their customers is on Instagram, etc. So you really want to ensure that you still have some amount of ownership outside these systems. Because remember, these systems they own. They own everything. Making it free, right? They own everything they have. So we have to think through as well as businesses, Caribbean businesses, how we can have access to that information. They'll use the platforms, of course, to connect to your customers, talk to them, etc. But there must be some way if you need to send an email, if you need to do a marketing campaign, if you have a new product that you just launched and you want to get that to your customers, it's always good to be able to directly be able to send them an email. If you have WhatsApp or something like that, to be able to connect with them directly or call them. Because we all know email, we're inundated with emails, and even just a phone call will be great for persons to receive that. Yeah.
Definitely. So making sure that you always have backups and not relying on
redundancy, right? Redundant.
So can you share a specific example of how Dataffluent has helped a business overcome data challenges and achieve growth?
Yeah. Nice. Please go. So for us, we work with different companies. We provide advisory services as well as we have our platform, our fintech platform, where persons can get insights on publicly listed companies on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. So for us, we work with different companies trying to advise them around how to use data to be able to make decisions, how to use data to be able to scale and grow, how to analyze patterns and trends that may be happening with their customers and how they can use that maybe to build innovative products, maybe to use that to be able to get rid of some of the existing products that they have that are no longer working, no longer serving them. So we help customers in different ways. I think part of what we're doing now, like we have a private pilot, is we're looking at helping investors and financial analysts to be able to use our platform to get to decisions faster. So typically they would have to do a manual process of copying from PDF files, putting it in Excel sheets, and then be able to update and run their models, but they can simply just get that data from our platform without being able to go through those or without having to go through those manual steps. They can easily access information. And once they access information, they're getting all these reports and this analysis in minutes, hours, as opposed to taking them 2 to 3 weeks to be able to get that done once a company has put out their quarterly or annual reports. So how we're helping businesses in so many different ways and so many different facets, and we're super excited to see how these little breadcrumbs will help to change and transform what's happening in the Caribbean as well.
Definitely. What is one particular case study that you feel like has been the most impressive one that has utilized your software?
Nice. So we're still in, I'd say, like the early stages of our pilot. But what I think is we actually did some workflows testing with some financial analysts, different organizations. And what we found is we had them go through their usual process of how that would work. And then we had them start to look through now, if they were to use a platform, how would that change their process? And what was amazing was just like, okay, yeah, I can get what I'm doing, what I would have to do for one company that would take me like 5 days, 6 days. For the more senior analysts, they can get through it faster. So it's still taking them like 5 days and they can get this done in an hour or less. So like when we tested that workflow with some focus groups, that was one of the things I was like, yeah, this is game changing for for the market, because it's not just the time we're saving, it's also money, because now this analyst can free up their time, they can focus on something else, they can start working through other things that they have as priority items for them, and they can provide more value to their clients. So that's definitely one of the, I would say, use cases and case studies, just like side-by-side comparison in real time. Yeah.
1 week to 1 hour is very impressive because I think recently an analysis just came out that AI hasn't made that much productivity gains as we expected. I think having these like time that is reduced from doing something that takes a week to an hour, I think that's a real game changer.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. For sure.
So, how can data insights attract foreign investments to the Caribbean? And what role does data affluent play in this process?
So the thing is, foreign investors, when they're looking at entering new markets, they're looking at possibly, especially if it's something new that's not currently in the market, they need to do research to support that business case, right? Like, why would I come to Jamaica to bring a theme park? Or why would I come to Jamaica to build out this new type of restaurant or this new type of business model? So where the data does not exist, it's going to be very difficult for them to justify spending millions of dollars investing in rollout into a country where they really don't know if this is going to work. So that's where data insights is very critical for foreign investment. So once we can see the data, we can analyze, even if it isn't that there is an existing company within that industry, but just being able to maybe get an assessment of demand, get an assessment of, is this a fit? Is this a market fit for this particular? Are we too early? Are we too late? Those insights that investors really need to understand if this is worthwhile putting up that amount of capital, then definitely insight is very critical. And even if there are potential for partnerships, maybe they could find a local business or local entrepreneur or investor that would like to partner, all of that being with the insights and data around to be able to make those sort of decisions. So data is very critical in foreign investments because they just go to other markets where they have the data, right? So if they're going to analyze the Caribbean and they go to Latin America and they can get all the insights of what is happening in the South America versus the Caribbean, then they're going to invest in South America, right? Because we know the difference in numbers in terms of population. So that alone would make the South American market more attractive compared to the Caribbean space. But if they have the data and the insights that can support that to show them that this is just a viable market as this one, then that changes everything for investment.
Definitely. So just making sure you have that data to attract foreign investments.
Exactly. Because Jamaica is big on tourism. We just had our carnival, Jamaica Carnival, which now we're starting to track the numbers for that. And Jamaica Carnival is decades old, right? But we're seeing a resurgence and the numbers are now coming out. And we're seeing that it generated last year 95 billion for the Jamaican. And that's everything, right? That's everyone from having their Airbnbs, hotels, persons who would sell things on the street, persons who make the costumes, all of those things. So it's huge. And then those numbers now, we're looking at the new numbers because it just concluded on Sunday. And they're saying that, oh, there's like a 10% growth or 20% growth in visitor arrivals into the island coming for carnivals. And that alone shows you that that's a huge, booming, growing industry. So we need those numbers because persons can look at those numbers and say, this is attractive. Maybe I should come to Carnival to be able to maybe host an event, or maybe if I want to come and have a band or something like that. So those numbers really do help to paint the picture and to tell the story of what is happening in the market. And if investors really and truly can come in and at least have an impact or make back some money, because that's a real thing, right? They want return on investment if it's possible for them to get that return on investment.
Definitely. I think numbers can really make the case. I already want to go.
There you go. You should. 2026. Panida, 2026.
In your view, how can data-driven strategies contribute to sustainable business practices in the Caribbean?
Wow, that's a good one. Yeah, some really good questions. I love it. So there's a lot of different ways. One thing I think that is important is now the Caribbean, you have obviously different islands in the Caribbean, a combined population of about 44 million. But for the Caribbean itself, we're just now like looking at, like individual countries are looking at drafting like their AI task force and AI policies, AI strategies. But we also, I think, need to look at data-driven strategies as well tied to those AI policies, because a lot of the things that we're going to consume around AI models that would have been built, things that we're currently using are going to be trained on data that is not reflecting our region, right? So any little nuances, any little differences, variances that are very unique to us, or just things that only maybe exist in this particular market, right? Specific to this market, specific to this region, that will be missed in that entire conversation. So I think data-driven strategies very important for not just businesses to adopt, but also for it to reach policy and government level as well, in terms of how we think about data, how we think about access to data, how we think about even storing our own data in the region, right? Because similar to you have the EU, the European Union, we have CARICOM, which is the Caribbean Community, which is similar fashion from the EU, not as, I say, successful or popular, but we're doing the work. But CARICOM as well is working on those sort of strategies as well. Like, how can we come together as a region? Because we're so small, it only makes sense if we're combined as one entity, right? Especially for certain things. How can we look at how do we have some sovereignty even for our data as well? So I think even when you're thinking about data-driven strategies and all of those things, I think we also need to go deeper and look at how is all of this that is happening. How can we ensure that we own our data, we have access to our data, we're contributing to the pool of knowledge that currently exists, and ensuring that whatever is happening, whatever is being built, which we know will be in some ways inherently biased, that we are at that table and that we can contribute and we can also build our own things that we may need as well. So I think when I think of data-driven strategies from the Caribbean for businesses, it has to go not just at the business level, but also at the policy and government level and regional level as well.
Definitely. So making sure you're not only a user, but also contributing to policies and also building more tools.
Exactly. You can't just be consumers, not in this age. This is the age of building, creating. So we have to also be building and creating and not just consuming.
Definitely. So what motivated you to transition from a corporate executive role to founding Dataffluent, and what challenges did you face along the way?
So I transitioned from a corporate executive role, did consulting. I co-founded a consulting company. And then I think doing consulting, I realized that even though I'm helping companies to, elevate their data expertise and their analytics expertise and training, there's still a gap with data in the region, data in Jamaica, access to data, access to insights. There still needs to be some amount of democratization of data in the region, right? For persons to be able to get access to that. So that's part of the mission of Dataffluent. As much as we started on B2B, when I say democratizing, you think, but you're B2B focused, that's just the beginning, right? You're going to eventually go to the consumer, to the retail investors, to the average individual person, and ensure that we can have those insights available as well. So I think part of what, or at least I'd say the bigger driving factor to create this company is really just noticing that there's just really a lack of data. And while we may be doing all these different things, that person, I'm using AI, and how about AI in schools, and how about this and that? But what about the data? Because there's no AI without data. It's really just noticing that there's a gap, and someone has to walk that path to be able to start filling in that gap, so that, as you said before, which from the previous conversation, that we're not just using the tools that exist and using the resources that exist, but we're also also adding to that body of knowledge as well. So I think that's part of the mission, adding value to the space. Yeah.
Definitely. So making sure you own your own data and you contribute to building things in the space as well.
Exactly. Yep.
So can you share a moment in your career that solidified your passion for working with data?
So the thing is, I did computer science. That was my bachelor's. Yeah, I know. I did computer science. And when I did computer science, I'm like, I don't really want to do programming. I don't want to have that as my full-time job. So I was thinking, what else? How else can I position, or what other career paths can I take? And then luckily, I got an internship as a data analyst at one of the largest telecommunications companies in the Caribbean. So that sort of started me on the path in data, and I've been in data ever since, like that first role. So I always say that data found me. It wasn't something I was looking at. was like the kind of role that they just kind of land in and you're like, oh, I like this. This is cool. This is fun. In working in data now, I've done like all the different roles: engineer, data scientist, lead teams, manage teams, build different things that are now even instrumental and fundamental in the companies that I would have left as well. So in looking at all of that, I would definitely say that for data, for AI, when you're looking at your career path, when you're looking at what you want to do, when you're looking at, what makes sense, especially if you, like me, you did computer science degree, and then not to say that data is totally different field, it's adjacent in some way, but I just know that it's very important for you to be able to analyze what is going on, the market trends, what is happening, and then just focus and lean in on the path that you want to take. And I think data for me was one of the things that didn't know that it would be this career path that I would still be on, and creating companies still related to data even after leaving corporate. But it's been a very rewarding experience. So I'm very happy and excited to have been on the journey.
Definitely. So for our young listeners, you never know where you end up.
Well, you never know. You never know. That is true.
So how do you envision Dataffluent impacting local communities in the Caribbean, and what legacy do you hope to leave?
In terms of local communities, part of what we want to do as well, a big part is giving back. So I think in some ways we do give back in terms of just being able to employ, being able to provide jobs, resources for graduates, internships as well that we would do. So that's part of it. But I think we want to also be much bigger on the impact where the data that we're providing can also be able to spawn new companies, new ideas, similar to how you would have the data in the US for all the publicly traded stocks, Tesla, Apple, all of these companies. You can get access to that data, and then you can use it and build an entirely new system, platform, etc. So I think that's part of what we hope that we can help to spawn new industries, create new things from the data that we're currently building, right? As we're building this large pool of data. So the hope is that this will also spur enterprise pricing, innovation for the generation that is coming up, that they can see opportunities and they don't always think, oh, I have to leave the Caribbean to go somewhere else to work because there aren't enough opportunities here. I'm hoping that they can see that there are opportunities here just because they have access now to data and to systems that can help them to be able to build that.
I love that. So it's you don't need to leave your country, but you can innovate and bring those things to home.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So what
Yeah.
advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs in the Caribbean who want to build data-driven businesses?
I'd say one thing I'd say is just be prepared that this is a very challenging journey. Yeah, it is very challenging, right? Because you're just like an uphill battle, especially where you have resistance in some ways from maybe institutions, maybe individuals who don't see the value in data. Because I think that's part of the roadblock that we also face. Where persons are like, yeah, but data should be free. Why do I need to pay for this? This is not the US. We're not going to pay for this. This should be free. It should be available. Why do I need to pay? So there's that hurdle, right? That there's still that sort of mindset and mentality around data and the value of data, right? So persons will use AI, they will use all these different systems, but they'll still challenge you on paying for data, but they'll pay for other things, right? So I think that there's that mindset that you'd have to get over, but that's just part. I think we're doing part of that work as well. So hopefully the startups that would come after us would have it much easier in terms of persons understand and see. Like people say, oh yeah, data is a new oil, data is a new whatever. But I think people say that, but when you actually start to dig through and having those conversations, you realize that even though they say that, they're like, yeah, it's oil, but we want oil free. Those entrepreneurs will face that challenge. But I'd say persevere, stick through it. And in terms of building data-driven companies, I'd definitely say that you have to ensure that you spend a lot of time and focus and energy on ensuring that you're setting up the proper systems, automate as much as you can, because it's really intensive. It is a lot of work. So do a lot of automation, ensuring that you're validating the data that you have, because we know even with that challenge and mindset, if you bring something and it's incorrect, then you're already going to have another hurdle to cross, right? So you don't want to have those sort of additional layers of resistance. So I definitely say just automate as much as you can and ensuring that you're paying a lot of attention to the accuracy of the data that you have to support a data-driven organization, because that's going to be critical. Because if we make decisions on inaccurate data or data that may have gaps or may have challenges or data that may be stale dated, then obviously that will impact the quality of the decisions that we're making. So I'd say to focus on those things that can those be our hallmarks of success and quality, then I think that they will, the other hurdles, they'll be fine because they'll be equipped with those fundamentals to be able to overcome those.
Definitely. So always validate and automate
Yeah.
as much as possible.
Validate, automate, that could be a song.
So looking ahead, what do you see as the biggest opportunity for data and AI in the Caribbean over the next 5 years?
Yeah. Biggest opportunity I see is that it changes the game, it changes the landscape for the Caribbean, because I think the age that we're in now, it's a much more level playing field. We could have a lot of successful startups, even unicorn type startups coming from the Caribbean as well. Of course, maybe we need funding and some other resources. Of course, that would be useful. But I do think just with the availability of AI tools, agentic AI, and how the barriers are much lower in terms of cost, in terms of access, I definitely think I'd hope as well over the next 5 years that we can see really more innovation, more startup acceleration and innovation, and possibly the first unicorn coming out of the Caribbean, homegrown, built, but of course, built for global impact. Because that's also part of it as well, that we can build here, and that's great. Solve a problem here. But I think in some ways, because we're also so small and the market is so small, that we should also be thinking, how can we scale for global impact and serve some sort of universal need for other persons that may be facing similar challenges? And I think once we start to plug away at those ideas and what is happening over the next 5 years, we can definitely see a lot of acceleration and startup innovation coming from the Caribbean.
So you recommend solving a Caribbean problem and then expanding globally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Definitely. So thank you so much for sharing all of your insights today. I'm sure my audience would really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Panida. It was really great to be here. And thank you as well for all that you're doing.
Thank you.